The official record of the Second World War is a neat thing. It has dates, battle lines, victors, and vanquished. It is a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the chaos. But buried beneath the granite monuments and the history books are other stories. Stories written not in ink, but in shadow and blood. This is one of them. It did not happen on the beaches of Normandy or the streets of Stalingrad. It happened in a forgotten corner of the Austrian Alps, in a place called Stalag Wien, a prisoner-of-war camp that became the stage for the war's most secret and most tragic final act. It begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. A treasonous, desperate, and hopeful whisper that traveled from the lips of a captured German major to the ears of an American colonel. A whisper that proposed a simple, impossible thing: to end the war before the true storm arrived. This is the story of the deal that almost was. The story of the men who tried to cheat fate. The sound of the harmonica stops abruptly. The crunching boots halt. A heavy, metallic bolt slams shut. The screen goes completely silent for a beat. This is the story of the POW camp that ended the war. The unlikely proposition. The air in the Austrian Tyrol in March of 1945 was cold enough to freeze the breath in your lungs, a sharp, crystalline cold that seeped through the thin wool of greatcoats and bit at the skin. Stalag Wien was less a camp and more a hastily converted stone manor house, surrounded by a double fence of barbed wire and watchtowers that peered down like skeptical, wooden eyes. The snow on the peaks above glowed with an ethereal light, a cruel contrast to the mud and despair below. Inside his Spartan office, Colonel James Ryder of the 101st Airborne stared at a map pinned to the wall. It wasn't an official military map. It was one he'd drawn himself, based on whispers, coded BBC broadcasts, and the haunted looks in the eyes of new arrivals. Red crayon arrows, representing the Soviet Third Ukrainian Front, pressed west from Hungary, a tidal wave of vengeance heading straight for Vienna. Blue arrows, his own people, were still mopping up resistance along the Rhine. They were too far away. Ryder was a man carved from oak and sinew, his face a roadmap of the campaigns from North Africa to the Bulge. But here, in this stagnant camp, he felt the war slipping into a new, more terrifying phase. It was no longer about winning. It was about surviving the peace. A quiet knock at the door. Sergeant Miller, a young man from Ohio with eyes that had seen too much, entered. "Sir, the German officer you asked for. Major Engel." "Send him in, Sergeant." The man who entered was a study in contrast to Ryder. Major Klaus Engel was tall, lean, with a sharp, intellectual face and eyes that held a deep, weary intelligence. His uniform, though worn, was clean. He was a staff officer, captured during the confusion of the Ardennes, a man who spoke perfect English and had, until now, been a model of quiet, detached captivity. "Colonel," Engel said with a slight, formal nod. "Major." Ryder didn't offer a seat. "You requested this meeting. Make it quick." Engel's gaze drifted to the map on the wall. He studied the red arrows for a long moment. "You see it, too," he said, his voice soft. "The real enemy." Ryder's jaw tightened. "I see a lot of enemies, Major." "Please, Colonel. Let us not play the fools our uniforms demand we be." Engel took a step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The Reich is finished. It is a corpse that does not yet know it is dead. My superiors, some of them, they know this. But the orders from Berlin are to fight to the last man, to turn Germany into a funeral pyre. And why should I care about the funeral arrangements of the Third Reich?" Ryder's voice was a low growl. "Because you are not just a soldier, Colonel. You are a man of Europe. You have seen what the Russians leave behind. It is not liberation. It is replacement. A new tyranny for the old. They will not stop at the Elbe. They will take everything. And this." He gestured around the room, encompassing the camp, the valley, Austria itself. "This will be buried under the red banner." Ryder was silent, his mind racing. This was treason. Pure and simple. And he was listening to it. What are you proposing, Major? Engel met his gaze, his own eyes blazing with a desperate conviction. A ceasefire. A local surrender. Not to the Russians, but to the Americans. The German 24th Army is dug in throughout these mountains. They are tired, but they are not broken. They will fight the Soviets to the death if ordered. But their commander, General von Bruck, is a pragmatist. He is also my uncle. The air left the room. Ryder felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alpine cold. Engel continued, his words coming faster now. I can get a message to him. I can propose a plan. The 24th stands down. They allow American forces to pass through their lines unopposed. They surrender their arms to you. You get to Vienna first. You save this land from the storm that is coming. You save countless lives, German and Austrian alike. Ryder stared at him, his mind a whirlwind of implications. It was madness. A court-martial offense. It was redrawing the post-war map without authorization. It was also, potentially, the most strategically significant action any single officer could take in the closing days of the war. You are asking me to trust you, Ryder said finally. A Nazi. Engel's face hardened. I am not a Nazi, Colonel. I am a German officer. There is a difference, though I admit it has become a faint one. I swore an oath to my country, not to a madman in a bunker. My country is about to be torn in two. I am trying to save the larger piece. He reached into his tunic, slowly, and placed a single, folded photograph on Ryder's desk. It showed a young woman and two small children, smiling in a sun-dappled garden. A world away. My family is in Dresden, Engel said softly. I have heard stories. I do not wish for that to become the fate of all of Germany. Ryder looked from the photograph to the map, from the pleading in Engel's eyes to the cold, advancing red lines. He was standing on a precipice. He took a deep breath. All right, Major, he said, his voice barely audible. Tell me your plan. A web of shadows and wire. The camp itself was a microcosm of the war outside. In the main compound, Allied prisoners, Americans, British, a few French, tried to maintain a semblance of order. They staged plays, played baseball with sticks and rags, and waited. But a new tension had been introduced. Ryder's unusual meetings with the German major had not gone unnoticed. In the infirmary, a converted stable block that always smelled of damp straw and disinfectant, Sarah Brennan worked. An American army nurse captured after the fall of Bastogne, she had become the camp's soul. Her hands, though often raw from the cold, were gentle as she changed the bandages on a young British pilot with a fever. She looked up as Colonel Ryder entered, his presence causing a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Colonel, she nodded. Lieutenant Brennan. A word. They moved to a quieter corner, away from the rows of cots. How is he? Ryder asked, nodding toward the pilot. The fever broke. He'll live. For now. She studied Ryder's face. You look like you haven't slept, sir. It's the air, Sarah. It's getting thinner. He trusted her. In this place, trust was a currency more valuable than the cigarettes they used for barter. He gave her a heavily edited version of the situation, that there were talks, dangerous talks, with elements of the German command who wanted to surrender. That the camp might be in danger from SS units loyal to Hitler that were known to be operating in the area, hunting for traitors. Sarah listened, her intelligent eyes taking it all in. So we're not just waiting for liberation anymore. We're sitting in the middle of a, what? A negotiation? A very fragile one, Ryder confirmed. I need you to be my eyes and ears here. If you see anything, anyone new, anything out of the ordinary, especially among the German guards. Not all of them are regular army. She understood. The camp's garrison was a mix of old, weary Lanzer who just wanted to go home, and a handful of younger, fiercer men whose allegiances were less clear. One of them, a Corporal Vogler, a hard-faced man with cold eyes, had been paying a little too much attention to the comings and goings from Ryder's office. Later that night, in the secret, hushed darkness of the storage cellar, Ryder and Engel met again. A single kerosene lamp cast long, dancing shadows on the stone walls. "I have made contact," Engel whispered, his face pale in the lamplight. A radio message, sent through a sympathetic guard to a relay station in Innsbruck. "My uncle has agreed, in principle. But he demands guarantees." "Guarantees?" Ryder hissed. "From my side? I'm operating on a goddamn prayer here, Engel. He needs to know the Americans will honor the surrender. That his men will be treated as POWs, not executed as partisans. And he needs a timeline. The Russians are less than 200 kilometers away. Their forward scouts are Cossacks. They do not take prisoners." Ryder ran a hand over his face. He was a colonel, not Eisenhower. He had no authority to offer any of this. "I can get a message out. I have a hidden receiver. But it's a risk. Every transmission is a risk." "The whole endeavor is a risk, Colonel," Engel said flatly. "The greater risk is inaction." Their conversation was a delicate dance, two master fencers probing for weaknesses. Ryder was constantly waiting for the trap, for the moment this would be revealed as an elaborate German trick. Engel was gambling his life, and his family's life, on the honor of a man he barely knew. As Engel was slipped back into the main POW barracks, he passed a figure huddled in the shadows, pretending to sleep. It was Private David Crow, a sharp-eyed kid from Brooklyn who had a knack for being in the right place to hear the wrong thing. Crow waited until the coast was clear, then scurried off towards the German side of the camp, towards the quarters of Corporal Vogler. A packet of American cigarettes changed hands, and a few whispered words were exchanged. The American colonel and the German major, meeting again. In the cellar. Vogler's lips curled into a thin smile. He had his own loyalties, and they were not to a defeated Wehrmacht general. They were to the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, the Nazi Party's intelligence service. The traitors were revealing themselves. The Noose Titans. If you're still here, you're one of the few who seek the untold truths of war, so hit subscribe, and never miss what history tried to bury. The days began to blur, each one stretching taut with a nerve-shredding tension. The weather turned, a late-season snowstorm blanketing the camp in an eerie, sound-absorbing quiet. It was a false peace. Ryder, using a receiver hidden in a false-bottomed ammunition crate, managed to make brief, encrypted contact with an OSS operative attached to the advancing U.S. Fifth Army. The response was cautious, ambiguous. "Stand by. Situation noted. Do not, repeat, do not, initiate unilateral action." It was the language of bureaucrats, of men who were afraid of making a mistake. Ryder needed a miracle, and he was being told to wait for a committee decision. Meanwhile, the shadow play within the camp intensified. Sarah Brennan noticed the change. The regular German guards, the ones who would sometimes sneak the prisoners extra rations, became sullen and withdrawn. The harder men, like Vogler, became more assertive, their patrols more frequent, their gazes more intrusive. She was changing a bandage on a Scottish soldier when she saw it. Through the infirmary window, Vogler and Private Crow, deep in conversation by the wire. Crow was nodding vigorously. "Colonel," she said, finding Ryder during the evening head count. It's Crow. I think he's feeding information to Vogler. Ryder's blood ran cold. A spy. In his own ranks. The bitter irony was almost laughable. He had Sergeant Miller place Crow under discreet surveillance, but the damage may have already been done. The breaking point came on a crystal-clear night, the sky a vast, starry dome over the mountains. Engel was summoned to the commandant's office. The commandant, a portly, aging colonel named Reinhard who mostly concerned himself with his own comfort, was not alone. Sitting in Reinhard's chair was a new arrival, a man in the field grey of the Wehrmacht but with the silver death's head insignia of the SD on his collar. He was lean, with a predator's smile and eyes that held no light. Major Engel, the man said, his voice smooth as oil. I am Standartenführer Graf. I have been sent to assist with the security of this camp. There are rumors. Ugly rumors of defeatism. Of treason. Engel stood ramrod straight, his heart hammering against his ribs. I am not aware of any such rumors, Standartenführer. Are you not? Graf stood and circled him. We have received a report. A most interesting report. It suggests you have been having unauthorized communications with the enemy. That you are planning to betray the German people in their hour of need. He stopped in front of Engel, so close Engel could smell the stale tobacco on his breath. Where is your family, Major? Dresden, is it not? A beautiful city. It would be a tragedy if anything were to happen to it. Or to them. The threat was explicit, vile. Engel felt a cold fury wash over him. This was the true face of the regime he had served. This was what he was trying to stop. I am a loyal officer, Engel forced out, his voice tight. Of course you are, Graf smiled. Prove it. Tell me about your conversations with Colonel Ryder. The interrogation lasted for an hour. Engel stuck to a cover story that he was merely discussing the treatment of prisoners, the rules of the Geneva Convention. He was a staff officer, an expert on such things. It was thin, and he knew Graf didn't believe a word of it. He was being given just enough rope to hang himself. He was dismissed, his body trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. He had to get a message to Ryder. The window was closing. Graf was the noose, and it was tightening around all of them. He managed to slip a note, folded into a tiny square, to a trusted guard to give to Sarah Brennan. It contained only a few frantic words. The wolves are inside the gate. They know. We have hours, not days. The package must be delivered tonight. The package was the final, detailed surrender terms, the route for the American envoys, the agreed-upon signals. It was everything. It had to be taken to General von Bruck's headquarters, 20 miles to the east, through a mountain pass crawling with both German and SS patrols. Ryder read the note in his office, his face grim. It was over. The deal was blown. Graf would shut it down, arrest Engel, and probably have him shot. The best they could hope for now was a quiet end to the war in this camp. But Ryder wasn't built for quiet ends. He looked at Sergeant Miller. Get me my jump jacket and my sidearm. Sir. We're going for a walk, Sergeant. You can't be serious, sir. It's suicide. Maybe, Ryder said, pulling on the jacket. But if we do nothing, we're just waiting for the butcher's bill. I didn't survive Normandy and the Bulge to be murdered in a stable by the Gestapo. And I'll be damned if I let that brave, foolish German die for trying to do the right thing. His plan was audacious, insane. He and Miller would escape. But their destination wasn't the American lines to the west. It was east, towards the German lines. They would deliver the package themselves. The fire that erases. Chaos erupted at 2,200 hours. A diversion was staged near the western fence, a small fire in a trash bin, sending guards scrambling. In the confusion, Ryder and Miller, blackened with soot and wearing stolen German greatcoats over their uniforms, slipped out through a drainage culvert Sarah had shown them. They carried the precious documents and a single Luger pistol. The world outside the wire was a vast, black emptiness. The wind screamed down from the peaks, carrying with it the promise of more snow. They moved like ghosts, keeping to the tree line, their every sense screaming. Every shadow was an SS patrol, every crack of a frozen branch a rifle shot. Back in the camp, all hell was breaking loose. Graf was not fooled. He knew this was no ordinary escape. He stormed into the POW barracks, his men dragging a beaten and bloody Klaus Engel behind him. "Where is he?" Graf screamed at the assembled prisoners. "Where has your colonel gone?" Silence. A solid, defiant wall of silence. Graf's eyes fell on Sarah Brennan, who stood at the front, her chin held high. "You. The nurse. You are close to him. You will tell me." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. Graf backhanded her across the face, a sharp, brutal crack that echoed in the silent hall. She stumbled but did not fall. Engel cried out, struggling against his captors.